ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله جل في العلا وأحسن هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue on this tremendous day from the days of the Hijjah, which are the best days of the year, which we take in consideration that maybe some of us are fasting today, so we won't bi'idhnillah jalla wa azza make it too long, too hard upon the brothers and people who are listening. As we come upon, with lillahi alhamd, the third day of the Hijjah, and tonight will be the fourth. And don't forget, everyone is able to revive the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in these days by doing the takbirat in which the people have left off. For no doubt, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that reviving the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is going to bring blessing in one's life. So if he's able to do it after the salat, or meaning not to restrict it, as well a lot of people do during these occasions, is to do it after the class or after the salawat, where it's not just only been legislated for those particular occasions or particular times and places. Rather, if you're able to do it in your car or in your house, in those different types of places in which it's not going to cause a harm, then try to do so and trying to bring life back to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, because this is a sunnah that's left off. Even if he was to go to some of the cities in the Middle East, they don't perform the takbirat in the aswaq or in the markets or in the streets or in the roads. They think it's only restricted for only after the salah as usual. That's the habitual thing that a lot of people are acclimated and accustomed to doing every year, which is incorrect. So if one is able, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, try to make the takbirat, like we said, if not in your car or in your house, and teach your children that these are from the best days of the year in which one is very diligent in doing more and putting forth a bigger effort of worship and performing all types of righteous actions and virtuous actions which will raise his degree in this world as well as in the hereafter. As we continue on this tremendous treatise of Kitaab At-Tawheed by the great Imam and the great illustrious scholar Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah, rahmatun wasi'u jazahullahu anna wa anil muslimin khairul jaza. Inshallah bi'idhnillah we'll try to complete the chapter today so we can start on istighatha, because I want to start moving a little bit fast in these lessons. We stopped at the hadith explaining the hadith of Khawla binti Hakim. As we continue in the chapter of al-isti'adha, from the worship of Allah Ta'ala is the affair of what they call al-isti'adha, which is of seeking refuge or seeking protection. Of al-isti'adha, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, as we talked about, is it is a type of worship which is from the rights of Allah only. It is not from the rights of the creation. Rather, the ibadah of what they call al-isti'adha is only for Him alone, subhanahu jalla fil ula. We stopped at the hadith of explaining Khawla, or the hadith of Khawla binti Hakim. We said Khawla, She was also known for her kunya, which is Shuraik. Shuraik. And they said that Khawla was the one, which comes in the hadith, which is in al-Bukhari, of the woman who offered herself to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They said that that was Khawla, binti Hakim. They say of the hadith, which is known what they call hadith al-Wahiba nafsaha lin-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the woman who came and offered herself to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is a known narration which has been extracted in al-Bukhari and other than that. For Khawla binti Hakim radiallahu anhu abdaha, that you notice in the narration, Ya ma'ash al-ikhwas, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned and said that she heard from the Messenger of Allah say this particular narration, which is from one of the ways, as we discussed, of one to attain protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the harm of the creation which possesses harm. As there are numerous narrations in which one, if he was to memorize and he was to actualize and practice, that it would give him all types of protection from any type of not only evil, what we deem to be harmful to our bodies physically, but even improving a lot of aspects or every aspect of the human being. As a lot of us, we need to memorize as much as we can a lot of the authentic narrations of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is comprehensive for all types of illnesses and sicknesses. A lot of people think it's just protection of the actual tangible or outside of affairs, which is of the physical protection. No. Rather, the different types of ailments of the heart, and likewise in actual etiquette and behavior. If you notice in all those narrations of the Prophet ﷺ, if you look at the various narrations that come and been authentically reported, you will notice that they give a cure for every type of sickness, whether it be of the heart, or whether it's in etiquette, or whether it's of one being affected by the jinn, or something pertaining to one being stingy, or one being a coward, or one, for example, having terrible manners. All those supplications are remedies for all of those affairs. Or for one to not be rightly guided, or asking Allah to improve your religious affairs, meaning make you a better righteous person. If you look to all of those different narrations, it is a remedy for the cure for all of those matters. If a person is a coward, those supplications aid you to be a person that's what? A person that has courage, and is a person that is what? Shuja'at, and it makes him what? Strong, and it makes him brave, or it makes her brave, or it makes her strong. Or, for example, improvement in one's etiquette or one's behavior. Or, for example, one being stingy. All those different supplications aids one into improving all those different types of qualities that might be considered dispraiseworthy and unacceptable with people. A stingy and being a person that is stingy is not something that is acceptable, especially in regards to what will help the religion go forward and help Allah Ta'ala's religion be the most utmost in the earth, and trying to spend in order for the religion to go forward. So being stingy in that regard is something that's praiseworthy. Or, for example, a person being a coward. A coward will help, will allow a person not to say the truth when it's time to say it. Or, for example, a person being in a relationship when it's time to be over, that they're afraid to leave because, for example, perhaps they're afraid to be alone. As this happens to a lot of our sisters, they're cowards. Or, for example, you'll say that they're in relationships for years because they're scared to be alone. It's a coward. So all those situations, or those ad'iyah and those supplications aids one into improving and removing from him all these different types of things that will allow one to be what? A human being where it is in affairs that's not acceptable. For so many supplications, if one was to ponder on, it improves every aspect of the human being. Not only in his affairs, like we said, of protection in the physical aspect, but even, like we said, in his manners and in his etiquette, and even in decisions he makes in his life. Proper decisions. Because if you don't have aid from Allah Ta'ala, you're going to make improper decisions. A lot of people don't know that some of those supplications, if you memorize them, Allah will give you insight and inspiration, inshaAllah, not wahi, but actually pointing you in the right direction to allow you to see what will be a best decision to make you a better person as far as in your religion, and improving your worldly affairs to help you make good decisions in those matters too. Likewise, as a lot of people don't realize. So all those supplications, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, are very vital and important in the Muslim's life. But in regards to this particular hadith, you'll find that it's a protection from what? It's a protection from the actual physical harm. And also likewise a protection of what will take place, of course we said, from the jinn. As it says in the hadith where it says, where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned and said, من نزل بمنزل فقال أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق لا يضره شيء حتى يرتحل من منزله ذلك. Then he says in the authentic hadith of Khawlah binti Hakim radiyallahu anhu abdaha, he says, whoever says أعوذ بالله أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق, I seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah Ta'ala from the evil He created. Nothing will harm him until he leaves off that place of his. So this hadith, like we talked about last lesson, what did we say, everyone? We said that this particular narration is in regards to what? Firstly, number one, you will find in this narration the affair, what they call al-isti'adha, of seeking refuge. The seeking refuge, like we said, here in this particular narration, the Prophet ﷺ, of affairs that in which only Allah Ta'ala can do. As we'll talk about, there's one exception in regards to what they call al-isti'adha, meaning finding some protection in the creation, which has certain conditions in it, as we'll discuss momentarily. In a minute, we'll talk about it. But as far as the affair of the ibadah, we're talking about ibadah, that's only for Allah Ta'ala, from what? Of protection one can give, of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only can what? Can do. For example, protection from the jinn, or protection from the different creatures and animals, of what Allah ta'ala controls. Because we know of the nasiyah, the forelock of everything created is in the hands of Allah ta'ala. If Allah willed, Allah will allow a scorpion to bite you, and you wouldn't even realize it. Or if Allah had willed, something poisonous will bite you. And if Allah ta'ala willed, He will what? Take it away from you. As all the forelock of the creatures, all of it is in His hands, tabaraka wa ta'ala. Ultimately, He's in control of it. For we see what take place as far as in this dua, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, it says, أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات. As we talked about last lesson, we said what Imam Ahmed had mentioned in that particular narration. What did we say last class? What did we say? We said that this is from the ahadith, and which shows that the Quran is not makhluk. And that if it was makhluk, based upon what the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila that they mentioned and say, then it would necessitate that the Prophet ﷺ commanded the Ummah to fall into polytheism. If you look into the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in the book, it says, I seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah. We know that isti'adha, seeking refuge, is a type of worship. We know that the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila, what did they say, ya ma'ashal ikhwa? They said that the Quran is makhluk, meaning that the words of Allah are created. The words of Allah are created. If the words of Allah are created, then that means, based upon this hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ commanded the Ummah to seek refuge in something created, which is here in this narration. So based upon that, that would mean that the Prophet ﷺ commanded his Ummah to commit polytheism. Because we know it's not permissible for what? For one to seek refuge in something created. And here in this particular narration, the Prophet ﷺ said what? To seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah. Meaning, from the characteristics of Allah, which is what? His speech. And His speech is not created, as we mentioned and said. Right, everyone? So based upon that, there's a refutation against the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila, as we discussed last lesson. Because we said that here in this narration, the Prophet ﷺ commanded his ummah to seek refuge in a characteristic of Allah, which is His speech, which is permissible. As we said, it's permissible to seek refuge in Allah Himself, or His names, or His attributes. It's permissible. If we want to say, أعوذ بكلمات الله, or for example, أعوذ بعزة الله, أعوذ بقدرة الله, أو اللهم برحمتك أستغيث, to the end of it. That we know, for example, from the different narrations that the Prophet ﷺ had gave a lot of different alternatives of what is permissible and the boundaries of Allah, of what is considered Tawheed and unification of Allah. Number one is to seek refuge in Allah Himself. Or number two, to seek refuge in a name from His names. Or number three, to seek refuge in a characteristic of His different characteristics. As we mentioned, and also likewise and said, for number one, we gave numerous examples, and from that example is what is written in everyone's book here. Where you see that the Prophet ﷺ said, what everyone? I seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah. So the words of Allah is what everyone? His speech, which is a characteristic of the characteristics of Allah Jalla fil Ula. Notice in the hadith, as it says in the last part, as we talked about last lesson, nothing will harm him. Nothing will come of harm. When the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, said, "Lam yadurrahu shay," nothing will harm him. This is what they call nakiratu fi siyaq al-nafi. It's indefinite in the context of it's indefinite in the context of a negation. Meaning, if you look in the hadith in your books, it says in the last part of the hadith, what does it say, everyone? Nothing will harm him until he leaves off that place of his. Nothing will harm him is what they call nakiratu fi siyaq al-nafi. It's called indefinite in the context of a negation. What do you mean indefinite in the context of a negation? When you see that type of wording in any type of hadith, that means it's generalizing everything with no exception. Nothing will harm you. Whether it be something physical, or whether it's something from the animals, or whether it's something from the human being, general, anything of any harm, of what type of evil, or what possesses evil, will not harm you if your heart is tied in with Allah Ta'ala. For one makes this dua and this supplication, he does it 3 times in the evening, of course, and likewise, and he descends in that type of place, and he says this dua, nothing of harm will come to him, generalizing everything. From everything that possesses evil, from the jinn and the ins, and other than them, of what is apparent or hidden, until he leaves off that place of his. So the jinn will not harm an individual or this person if he makes his dua, nor the human beings will harm him whatsoever. So it's generalizing everything. And this type, in which the Prophet ﷺ was the informant, he's the one that informed this type of speech. And we know this type of news in which the Messenger of Allah gave us, لا يمكن يتخلف. It will never what? It will always be carried out. It will never be what? It will never be suspended. It will have no effect whatsoever. Rather, it will definitely carry out. Why? It's because it's the speech of the one who is what? The one who is most truthful and veracious, and the one who's believed. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Those narrations in this one and others which are similar, such as the hadith which is on the authority of Aban ibn Uthman. Aban ibn Uthman, which comes on the authority of Aban ibn Affan. Aban ibn Affan, which Uthman ibn Affan narrated the hadith. Uthman ibn Affan narrated the hadith, and the narrator inside of that hadith, which I'm going to explain, his name was Aban ibn Affan. Aban ibn Affan. Aban ibn Affan said likewise, whoever says in the morning and the evening, he says, ما على العبد الذي يصبح ويمسي فيقول في كل صباح ومساء بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء 3 مرات فيضره شيء. فقال أبان فكان الرجل الذي سمع هذا الرواية منه نظر إليه، يعني بنظر العجب، لأن أبان قد أصابه طرف فالج، فنظر إليه فقال له أبان ألا إن الحديث كما حددتك ولكني نسيته يوما ليقضي الله تبارك وتعالى أو ليمضي الله علي قدره. To the end of the narrations it says that Aban, so whoever says this hadith in the morning, in the evening, 3 times, or he says this narration, or this dua, excuse me. I'm sorry everyone. Whoever says this supplication in the morning and the evening, 3 times in the morning or 3 times in the evening. In the evening time, everyone is after Asr, not after Maghrib, as a lot of people think. It's after Asr. That's when the evening starts, not after Maghrib. So whoever makes this dua in the name of Allah, nothing will harm by His name, nothing in the heavens and the earth, and He is all hearing and all knowledgeable. He's all hearing and all knowledgeable or all aware. Sami'un Alim. He says nothing will harm him. So Aban, as we said in the last narration, Aban, Asabahu tarafu falij, as it says in the narration. Asabahu tarafu falij, meaning that he became paralyzed in a certain part of his body, to the point where the narrator was surprised that why are you narrating this to me and this happened to you? What happened to you? Physically, you've been harmed. He says, the hadith, so when he was looking at him and a little bit astonished and amazed, he said to him, the hadith is just as I told you. However, I forgot to say it one day in order that Allah allow His qadr to take me over, which came as a result of it, I became harmed. So this hadith is to what? Is to show that the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true. As I made that dua, even myself, for years. And every time I forgot it, something happened. Something happened to me, physically. But every time I remember, nothing happened to me. Nothing. Every time I made the dua in the morning and the evening. This dua and likewise this one here in your books. For verily the greatest of protection is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The best type of defense and protection and fortification for anything that harms you in the creation. This is the best shield that you will have and make for yourself. For verily, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, these ahadith, and likewise what is written in your books, this one especially, if it doesn't have an effect, some people will think, Taib, I said it one day, and something still happened to me. Listen to what the great Imam Shaykh Uthaymeen said in this regard. He said, وَنَظِيرُ ذَلِكَ كُلَّ مَا أَخْبَرَ بِهِ النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ مِنَ الْأَسْبَابِ الشَّرْعِيَّةِ إِذَا فَعَلْتَ وَلَمْ يَحْصُلِ السَّبَبِ. Listen what he says, and some similar to that. If the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم informed the legislated reasons and matters and ways that if you did it, that the actual outcome didn't take place, does that mean that there's some type of discrepancy in the actual dua itself, meaning the reason of what you utilize in order to take as a protection? Is something of some type of discrepancy in that sabab, in that reason, meaning that dua? He says no. However, it's due to a mani'. It's due to some type of prevention that actually took place that prevented it from having an effect. He says similar to that, for example, a person will recite Surah Al-Fatiha over one sick, and he still does not become cured, and the remedy has no effect. He says, وَيَقْرَأُهَا بَعْضُ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَشْفِي الْمَرِيض وَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ قُصُورًا فِي السَّبَبِ بَلْ لِوُجُودِ مَانِعٍ بَيْنَ السَّبَبِ وَأَثَرِهِ وَمِنْهُ التَّسْمِيَةُ عِنْدَ الْجِمَاعِ فَإِنَّهَا تَمْنَعُ ضَرَرَ الشَّيْطَانِ لِلْوَلَدِ. To the end of it. He says, now, if a person, let's just say he recites Surah Al-Fatiha upon the one who was sick, it had no effect. He says it's not because there's some type of incompleteness or discrepancy in the dua, meaning the actual sabab, or the actual precautionary measure that you took in order to protect yourself, meaning the actual supplication. He said rather it was due to a mani'. It was due to something of a prevention that took over between the actual reason, meaning the dua, and its effect. For example, a person might say the dua before he's intimate with his spouse, in which is supposed to prevent the harm of the shaitan for the child. Maybe perhaps there might be a person where they use this dua, but it's still, the shaitan will harm the child. Why? Due to the fact that there's some type of prevention of what had prevented the effect of this particular dua. So a person has to now investigate what's the mani', what's the thing that actually prevented it, so he can remove it in order for the effect of the dua to take place. What is he talking about? Meaning some type of discrepancy in your iman. Or your heart might be turned in towards the actual dua itself, not towards Allah. As we talked about this on many occasions. The supplications is the sabab. It's the reason for what? For attaining the benefit or the protection of Allah. But your heart is still supposed to be tied in with Allah, even though you said the supplication. For the person's heart is always connected with Allah, not in the actual paper or the supplication itself. Rather, it's tied in with Allah Ta'ala. And Allah only legislated this as a way for you to attain some type of what? Protection. But your heart is not tied in with the actual dua, rather it's tied in with Allah. Or, like we said, your trust in Allah Ta'ala could be weak. Or your heart being tied in with Allah Ta'ala can be weak. For verily, this book was made in order to tie the heart of the servant with Allah, not with the creation. Ultimately, the creation of how you attain benefit is only from the means of what Allah Ta'ala legislated. No matter what it is, this we'll talk about. Even with your provisions in your job. We'll talk about the chapter, and I've said this, and I've repeated it on numerous occasions. I said, even with your job of how you attain your provisions, how you attain different types of pay that you attain in order to take care of your families or handle your affairs, or what you have of something worldly, of benefit, what have you. When you go to your job, your heart looks at your boss, of course, or the person that's giving you your money. You're just looking at him as the sabab, as the reason. Your heart is ultimately tied in with Allah, Ta'ala, not with what Allah created. So the person who's your employee, or the one who's giving you your check, or he's disseminating to you your pay or your sustenance, he's the reason. That's it. No more, no less. However, your heart is always tied in with Allah Ta'ala. Ultimately, your heart is tied in with Allah. And these even goes to our relationships. You'll find that a lot of sisters, their hearts are tied in with their husbands, where the love starts to now surpass to the level of a love of a deity, even though they don't realize it. What do you mean by that? To the point where you'll find, like we said, in certain sisters, like you'll tell them, if there's anybody, and I've heard some of these situations what they say, for example, certain statements, and this one has to be very careful with these type of statements. These statements are very dangerous. For example, that I'll do anything for you. I said, even if a person was to even if he was to make sujood, or even if I was to command you to do certain, I would do anything for you. I'll do anything to keep you. I'll do anything what you want to do for me. Anything. Anything? Anything? You'll even find that women even cling to the point where, like we said, of harm that will take place in the household to the children. All of that in order to what? Sister, why don't you leave the person and find something that is more beneficial for yourself and your religion, and someone is beneficial for your children, instead of hearing hollering and screaming and beating up and hollering and profanity and all these other drama that men do not and children do not need to see and hear in their households, which I keep hearing over and over again, and it disgusts me to my stomach, that children have to keep going through this in their households to see fathers beating up their mothers, or the mothers screaming and using profanity, using unbefitting speech that shouldn't even be used in the household in the first place of a Muslim. Shouldn't be using profanity on his tongue in front, especially in front of children. And then seeing the mother calling the father out of his name, and then seeing the father even putting his hands on the mother. All these different things that have given people mental illness and all types of problems and diseases in their minds. Sister, leave him. No, I love him too much. You love him too much. That's not love, that's sickness. That's dysfunction. That's dysfunctional. That's a mental illness. You're just used to doing that because you've been doing it for 10 years. That's what I'm used to, that's all I'm sticking with. What happened to your Tawheed and your trust in Allah Ta'ala? Leaving him off, and then Allah Ta'ala might be giving you something better in exchange. Stop being weak. And that's what we're talking about here when one's Tawheed gets tested, especially in these type of situations, especially in the households, where we see, like we talked about, all these children now that are seeing these type of affairs take place in front of them, which causes a result of it, mental illness and a bunch of issues, and which comes as a result of it, the problems never stop. Rather, they keep going, they become continuous until they drip in down to other households when they get married, when they grow up. So it becomes a chain and a cycle never broken. That's the reason why when one's Tawheed is strong, they'll say, I'm tired of this, I'm putting my trust in Allah, and if I know if I leave this off for Allah, Allah will give me a better exchange. Where the monotheism becomes strong in their hearts, to know that Allah will give them something better. But to the point now, if you look into your husband and you're letting your love, or natural love, now starts to transgress and go beyond the bounds of what Allah and His Messenger have set, then know for sure now there's a discrepancy in your iman. And so now when a person wants to look at the creation, and what they're supposed to only look at them is just a mere means, and that's it, or some type of natural love, now they start to now transgress the bounds to something else, where a person has to be very careful. So that's the reason why we say, Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, the creation or anything that Allah legislated is the mere means. That's it. Not the what? The thing that gives you benefit. Your heart is always tied in with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all circumstances. As far as the ibadah, there's no problem with having natural love, but natural love should never transgress the boundaries of which now starting to trickle in with Allah Himself, where you raise someone to a deity or anything of the creation to the level of a deity. There's nothing wrong with, like we said, the creation being the mere means. That's it. That's it. No more, no less. Or having a natural love for someone. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong saying to your wife, I love you. There's nothing wrong to saying to your children, you love them. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it's now going to start trickling in with your rights with Allah, this is when it becomes praiseworthy. And this is what Allah condemns in His book, where He says in His book, قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وَأَبْنَاؤُكُمْ وَإِخْوَانُكُمْ وَعَشِيرَتُكُمْ قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وَأَزْوَاجُكُمْ وإن كان آباؤكم وأبناؤكم وأزواجكم وعشيرتكم وأموالكم اقترفتموها وتجارة تخشون كسادها وتجارة ترضون كسادها أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيله تربصوا حتى يأتي الله بأمره والله لا يحب القوم الظالمين. Allah Ta'ala says, say if your children, say if your fathers or your children or your wives, or your families, or your husbands, or your tribe, or your relatives, or your money, of which you acquired, and also your living quarters that you dwell in, and that you live in. He says that you so-called love, and also that you have business and your money that you acquired and you attained, that you fear that it might go away, is more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger. Then wait until Allah brings His affair. Meaning Allah Ta'ala can replace you. And Allah Ta'ala will bring someone in their place, and they will do what is correct, and they will send your heart astray and put someone else in your place. And that's for all of us, without any exception. That's when Allah Ta'ala is saying, it's nothing wrong with you in loving these affairs, because a human being naturally loves certain matters of certain dunya. There's nothing wrong with that. However, Allah is clearly saying in the ayah, whatever, everyone, do not let this love get into the level of what? Where you love that person more than Allah and Allah Himself and His Messenger. Which now, if that comes as a case, then like we said, then this is when it becomes condemned and becomes looked down upon, praiseworthy. For that reason, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, even the supplications itself in your book, the supplications is just the mere means, that's it, of how you protect yourself. For one's heart is always tied in with Allah, so if this is the case, then inshallah if you make these supplications, it will have an effect. And you will see the effect on your life. And you will see the effect upon yourself, where Allah Ta'ala gives you that protection and that fortification, where you'll be protected from Him, by Him Ta'ala, where no harm will come to your body if you make this supplication. And likewise, if you read Surah Al-Fatiha upon the one who's sick, and you truly have your tawakkul in Allah, and your heart is tied in with Allah, that the actual remedy and the cure takes place by Him alone, then you will see the effect of it. But however, like we said, it's incumbent upon the one for one to look what is the prevention that actually halted or stopped or prevented the actual effect from becoming carried out. These could be from the reason. So once you what? Look to why these things do not have an effect. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So for one is to make this dua, then one's tawakkul, and his tied and his trust and his reliance in Allah has to be strong in order for these supplications to have a true effect in your life. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So now we say in regards to what? What we've been discussing, as even the Imam al-Qurtubi, that he mentions, it says about this particular dua, he says something of a good benefit. Imam al-Qurtubi, he says, وَمَعْنَى الْكَلِمَاتِ وَالْكَامِلَاتِ الَّتِي لَا يَلْحَقُهَا النَّقْص وَلَا عِيب كَمَا يَلْحَقُ كَلَامِ الْبَشَرِ. قال القرطبي, it said that the meaning of this hadith, if you look in your books, that the meaning of those perfect words of Allah, he said there has nothing in it of a discrepancy or infallibility, meaning it's perfect. Oh, excuse me, anything of discrepancy or fallibility, I'm sorry. He says just as this is subjected to the speech of mankind, as that has some type of what? Discrepancy and fallibility in it. But anyway, he says in a particular narration that he said that I made this dua, or I forgot to make this dua one day. He says, and I experienced this. He says, until I forgot it one day, and I came in my house and I did not say it. He says, and a scorpion bit me. He said, a scorpion bit me. So he said that this affair has been what? Is done based upon experience of one who makes his dua, that it actually what? It does work for the one who has strong trust in Allah Ta'ala. For the meaning of this supplication, then we'll stop, inshallah, because we almost finished the chapter. It says, he said one of the meanings of this dua that he says, when Allah Ta'ala, or the Prophet ﷺ said the perfect words of Allah, min al-kamilat, la yalhaquha naqs wa la'ib, meaning those words that has no discrepancy or any fault in it. I mean, it's perfect. So that's one meaning of the hadith. Second meaning, that is from ash-shafi al-kafiya, that it gives the actual perfect remedy and cure. Meaning, the words that are in the book of Allah, meaning the Quran. So he says that this hadith, if you look in your books, it says the words of Allah. So one meaning that it means is what? Those words that have no discrepancy or fallibility or fault in it. Number two, that perfect remedy, meaning of what comes in the Quran. Because likewise we know the Quran is the speech of Allah. It's number two. Also number three of what we mentioned and said, here showing that it's permissible to seek refuge in the characteristic of Allah, or from His characteristics, which is the speech, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded, or in this particular narration, the Prophet ﷺ commanded that we utilize it to gain protection from Allah ta'ala here. طيب. Read the matters, number one, the last part of the chapter. تفضل. The first part, the important points, or the matters that's mentioned in the last part of the chapter. تفضل. The explanation of the ayah of the jinn. طيب. Brothers, now we're going to discuss about a lot of the chapters in which we're going to speak about, which is going to come about isti'adah, seeking refuge, and also a lot of aspects of worship, which we'll discuss. The permissible affair in it is as far as, is it permissible now to seek protection from the creation of not with what is not connected with ibadah, of course, but in regards to what the creation is able to do as far as giving one protection in those detrimental matters of what will take place, of some type of danger that might happen to you in the road or what have you. Let's just say, for example, someone threatened to harm you, so now you're fleeing away from that person or an animal, a ferocious animal that's threatening your life. So you're running. So now you knock on the door of an individual, of a person. Knock on their door, I need protection. Can you help me? Is that permissible? Here in this particular instance, you're seeking what, everyone? Protection. Is this permissible or not? based upon what we just mentioned in this chapter. It's permissible. Why is it permissible? Because it's in those affairs of what creation can do, not what Allah Ta'ala has control of. And this is what we're talking about here, which is called seeking that protection from the makhluk, from the creation. As long as it's in the affairs of what they're able to do. And that's the details we wanted to give right now before we continue the matters. So what we're saying here, what is the detail, is فَإِذَا كَانَ الْمَخْلُوقِ لَا يَقْدِرُ عَلَيْهِ فَهُوَ مِنَ الشِّرْكِ. If it's in the boundaries of what only Allah can do, and you're asking the creation for that type of protection, that is what we're talking about when it becomes polytheism. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? For Shaykh al-Islam even mentioned and said about this, he says, لا يجوز الاستعاذة بالمخلوق عند أحد من الأئمة. He's talking about the worship. It's not permissible to seek refuge in the creation with anyone of the scholars who are considered to be true scholars of the religion. It is not permissible whatsoever. طيب. However, he says, وهذا ليس على إطلاقه بل مرادهم مما لا يقدر عليه إلا الله. What is intended by here is what only Allah Ta'ala can do. Because if it's from those affairs in which only Allah can do, then that's when it becomes polytheism. But however, similar to that, or gives an examples of those, of those who follow this type of shirk, is what you see of those who are in certain Muslim countries when they go to the graves and they say, oh, so-and-so protect me, who's dead in the grave. Or especially this is rampant and widespread amongst Turuq al-Sufiyya, especially those who are called the ways of mysticism or the practices of Sufiyya. This is rampant and widespread amongst them, where you'll find that they actually make dua to the people of the grave who are dead. And some of those so-called mashayikh of Turuq, in which they glorify and they magnify, and they also give them reverence and respect to the point where they even ask them while they're alive, oh Sheikh so-and-so, give me protection from the jinn, asking them directly while they're alive. This type of affair or this type of action is what we're discussing here in this particular chapter. Why? Because they're asking that particular Sufi Sheikh, or they're asking that person that's dead, in order to attain a matter which is only in the ability of Allah Ta'ala of getting protection to someone in regards to those affairs in which Allah Ta'ala has total domination and power over. As we mentioned and said, all the nawasi in the forelocks of the creation is in the hands of Allah. If Allah Ta'ala willed, who you want as far as your boss, He might not even give you your money. If Allah willed, that mosquito that landed on your leg, if Allah had willed, He would allow it not to bite you. All the forelock of the creation is in the hands of Allah Ta'ala. Also likewise, and even in our social matters, if Allah willed, that sister would agree to marry you. If Allah willed, that brother would agree to marry you. Ultimately, Allah Ta'ala, the forelock of the creation is in His hands. Even though we have what? Our own choice. Keep that in mind. Because I don't want it to drift over to now start having the i'tiqad of the qadariyah. Rather, we have our will. But ultimately, like we said, the affair is under the will of Allah. If Allah had willed, you would have attained that what? You would attain the lucrative benefits of your business when you set out to do it on that particular day. That person that wanted to meet you, that you wanted to carry out that certain business venture, you had that meeting with him, he didn't show up. Allah Ta'ala did not will that. Ultimately, the forelock of the creation is in the hands of Allah. For those affairs in which are only in the hands of Allah, that Allah Ta'ala can do, if you seek it from the creation, that's when it becomes shirk. For now, like we said, in the boundaries of what is pertaining to the creation, of what is permissible, as long as they can do it, and we gave numerous examples of this, such as, for example, let's just say you were in a forest, an animal of a lion tried to attack you, you ran away from it. That type of fear is permissible. Just as when you running away and fleeing away from that ferocious beast or lion to seek protection from a particular person, you bang on their door, can you help me? Aid me, give me some protection? Permissible. Why? Because it's in the boundaries of what the creation can do. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So do not mix up the affairs, and this type of isti'adha is permissible, as long as it's in the boundaries of what? Of what is not in the abilities of Allah Ta'ala. If it's in the boundaries of the abilities of Allah and His ability only, what He can do with the creation, that's when it becomes shirk. Is it clear, everyone? If I read the important matters again, I'm sorry. Seeking refuge in other than Allah is shirk. Hold on. It didn't say the tafsir? It's supposed to say tafsir ayat al-jinn. Oh, the tafsir of ayat al-jinn. The tafsir of ayat al-jinn was we talked about, right, everyone? What did we say? Of course, the surah al-jinn, in which the jinn, like we talked about, ya ma'ish al-ikhwa, the jinn was talking about how they disbelieved in what? Their people from the jinn were upon the polytheism. They rejected it. And they accepted the Quran when it was revealed, and how they were amazed with it, as it says in the first part of the ayah. That they سمعنا القرآن عجبا يهدي إلى الرشد فآمنا به ولا نشرك بربنا أحدا. Right, everyone? Allah Ta'ala says in His book about the jinn that they said that we heard the Quran and we were amazed at what we heard. And we will not set up partners with Allah, anything in the least. So they freed themselves from shirk and they embraced Tawheed. And as we talked about and discussed before, that we said they are from the jinn who are from the people of Tawheed and the people of the Sunnah. And the people of Ahl Sunnah. There's a lot of people think that the jinn from Ahl. Yes, there's from the jinn who are Ahl Sunnah. And they're from the jinn who are Salafi and who are from Ahl Sunnah. Is there jinn who are prophets and messengers? We said in the last class, what, everyone? No. Only people that are from the jinn who are what? They call warners. That's it. They're mundirin. They're just mundirin or mundirun. The only thing from the jinn, there are no prophets and messengers, just warners. As we talked about last lesson, right, everyone? So the jinn are upon different manners and different methods and different ways. Some of them are upon polytheism, and some of them are upon Tawheed. As Allah Ta'ala says also in His book, He says, وَأَنَّ مِنَّا الصَّالِحُونَ وَمِنَّا دُونَ ذَلِكَ كُنَّا طَرَائِقَ قِيدَدًا. He says, from us who are righteous, meaning upon Tawheed, upon Sunnah, upon the correct path, upon the correct methodology. And from us are other than that, meaning upon kufr, and shirk. And He says, we are all different ways, and different methodologies, and different beliefs. As it comes to Surah Al-Jinn. You'll find, even from the great Imam, the Imam of these days and times, who's Imam Muqbil, Ibn Hadi al-Wadi'i, Ibn Hadi al-Wadi'i, rahimahullah. وجزاه الله عنا وعن المسلمين خير الجزاء وضاعف الله في مثوبته وأعظم الله أجره رحمه الله. That he had a tape called نصيحتي لإخواني من الجن. He has a lecture on it. Imam Muqbil Ibn Hadi al-Wadi'i. He's put in the title of the lecture, he said, my advice to my brothers from the jinn. He made a whole lecture on it. He gave a lecture and he was directed to his brothers. He said, my brothers from the jinn. He said, Nasihati li ikhwani min al-jinn. He made a lecture on it to let you know that what? That they from the jinn are from what? From Ahl Sunnah. They are from Ahl Sunnah. But it does not legalize now for you to start saying or looking in your house and start talking to no one thinking you're speaking to the jinn. No, he just gave a general lecture. That's it, everyone. But it doesn't now legalize for you to go in your room, walk in your house, and turn off the lights in the dark, start giving a lecture in Alhamdulillah, Nahmadu wa Nasta'inu. Who are you talking to? I'm talking to the jinn. La. You understand, everyone? Rather, he gave a general lecture. It was general. He was talking to the people around him. But we know that the jinn, of course, are from the unseen, and they can see where we do not see them. And they can hear and they can see where we do not see them, but they can hear us when they can see us. But the jinn can hear and they can understand. But the problem, notice that the ayah and the hadith, the ayah, which is a sort of jinn, they give descriptions of themselves. So number one, some of them who are upon shirk, from them who are upon tawheed, from them who are upon ahl sunnah, from them who are righteous, and from them who are wretched. And from them also likewise that have abilities that can bring things very quickly and fast. Now, as it says in the hadith about what happened with Bilqis, as he says, what happened with Sulaiman during the time of what happened, during the queen of Saba, or what they call Sheba, I think they call her, right? The queen of Sheba. But anyway, what happened with Sulaiman, one of the jinn said, I will bring you the throne of the Arsh of Bilqis. Before you even stand it out, I'll bring it to you. He says, أَنَا آتِيكَ بِهِ قَبْلَ أَن تَقُومَ مِن مَقَامِكَ إِنِّي عَلَيْهِ لَقَوِيٌّ أَمِينٌ. As it says in the ayah. He said, verily, I will bring it to you before you even stand up. Verily, I'm upon that affair that I'm what? I'm strong and I'm trustworthy. So the jinn himself showed that how fast he can move and certain abilities that what? The human beings don't have. That's also from their what? Characteristics. Also, as we talked about the tafsir of the ayah, as we said last class, right, everyone? We said from the tafsir of the ayah also is what? That we said that the jinn also can service the human beings. And that was the reason why they will be in the hellfire. If the human being used the jinn and the jinn used the human beings. As we said in the tafsir of the ayah, which comes to Surah Al-An'am, ayah number 80. As we talked about what Allah Ta'ala said of what the jinn will say, and the human beings will say, when Allah gathers them all up and He's going to throw them in hell, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us and preserve you. He's going to throw them all into hell, and they're going to see the reason for why. He says, Rabbana, as Allah Ta'ala first will say to the jinn, قَدْ اسْتَكْثَرْتُ مِنَ الْإِنسِ. He said, يَا مَعْشَرَ الْجِنِّ قَدْ اسْتَكْثَرْتُ مِنَ الْإِنسِ وَقَالَ أَوْلِيَاؤُهُ مِنَ الْإِنسِ رَبَّنَا اسْتَمْتَعَ بَعْضُنَا بِبَعْضٍ وَبَلَغْنَا أَجَلَنَا الَّذِي أَجَّلْتَ لَنَا قال النار مثواكم خالدين فيها إلا ما شاء الله إن ربك حكيم عليم وكذلك نولي بعض الظالمين بعضا بما كانوا يكسبون. This is Surah Al-An'am, ayah number 80. Allah Ta'ala says in this book that jinn, you may have misled a lot of mankind to the point where you've landed them in the punishment in the hereafter. And we know that the majority of the people in this dunya worship the jinn, that they don't worship Jesus, the son of Mary, or they're not worshiping the human beings or anything Allah created, or the angels. Rather than actuality, they're worshiping the jinn. As Allah Ta'ala even says in this book, which is in the last part of the ayah, which is also Surah Saba. It's Surah Saba still. I think it's the last ayat, the last page is Surah Saba. As Allah Ta'ala says in this book, that He says, يَوْمَ يَحْشُرُهُمْ جَمِيعًا ثُمَّ نَقُولُ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ أَهَؤُلَاءِ إِيَّاكُمْ كَانُوا يَعْبُدُونَ قال سبحانك أنت ولينا من دونهم بل كانوا يعبدون الجن أكثر بهم مؤمنون فاليوم لا يملك بعضكم لبعض نفعا ولا ضرا ونقول للذين ظلموا ذوقوا عذاب النار الذي كنتم بها تكذبون. It says on the day we'll gather them together, and Allah is even going to bring the angels and ask them, did you tell the people to worship you? هؤلاء إياكم كانوا يعبدون. Did they used to worship you? سبحانك أنت ولينا من دونهم. You are their wali. He says besides any of them, meaning for the creation. Rather they used to worship the jinn. Majority of them believe in them. فاليوم لا يملك بعضكم لبعض نفعا ولا ضرا ونقول للذين ظلموا ذوقوا عذاب النار الذي كنتم بها تكذبون. We'll say to the majority of them, he says, taste the hellfire in which you used to deny and reject. Because we know a lot of people from the kuffar, so-called, even from the deviant sects, reject that there will be a so-called hellfire and punishment in the hereafter, which is pathetic and disgusting. But anyway, فَيَا مَعَشَ الْإِخْوَةِ, you find that the reality of what the jinn misled a lot of people until they landed them in the hellfire, and from the enjoyment of the human beings and the jinn, is just like what Ibn al-Qayyim mentions here. And we almost finished, where it says, قال Ibn al-Qayyim, he said, من ذبح للشيطان ودعاه واستعاذ به وتقرب إليه بما يحب فقد عبده وإن لم يسمي ذلك عبادة ويسميه استخداما. وصدق. واستخدام من الشيطان له فيصير من خدم الشيطان وعابديه وبذلك يخدمه الشيطان. لكن خدمة الشيطان له ليست خدمة عبادة فإن الشيطان لا يخضع له ولا يعبده كما يفعله هو به. To the end of it. He says, whoever slaughters or offers a sacrifice for shaitan and he invokes him and he seeks refuge in him, he draws close to him with what he loves, then he has worshipped him. Even if you do not call it worship, maybe you might just call it usage. I'm just using him. No, it's still worship. He says, you're right. He did use you. Shaitan did use you. He said, for verily you'll be from those who service the shaitan and from those who worship him. He said, because the shaitan will service one. He says, when you have now shown your subservience and your servitude for him, shaitan will come and give you an exchange and a compensation, which is what? He will do certain things for you. Whether it be of, like we talked about last lesson, telling somebody something of the unseen, or giving them something of service to harm an individual, because we know magic of harming people is a type of service from the shaitan. All those affairs are what? Is reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the hereafter they will be in hell. For this type of usage, if you harm someone by using the jinn, or likewise, using the jinn in order to so-called do some service for you in this dunya, whether either harming an individual or trying to find something or trying to levitate over water or so-called know something of the unseen of what takes place in people's lives, of what they call psychic readers and palm readers and fortune tellers and crystal ball readers. All these are different types of usages which Allah Ta'ala ultimately says, if you do it in this dunya, your abode will be hell. Is it clear what I'm saying? Play next part, because we almost finished. Because I want to do before Maghrib, everybody got to break their fast. Because even though it's time now. Come on, 2 more minutes, then we'll break fast, and then we'll stop. Jay, I think that's clear. We talked about what happened with Imam Ahmed, right, everyone? Imam Ahmed said that this is from the ahadith that what? It clearly shows that the speech of Allah is not created. And if it was created, that means that the Prophet ﷺ commanded his ummah to what? Commit shirk. Alhamdulillah. We have to go listen. Tafadal, I'm sorry. Number 4. Almost finished. Remember, it was brief. Jay, I think it's self-explanatory. Tafadal, last one. Jay. Oh, you called Tafadal. I have a couple in my office. I think we got a couple there. Oh no, they got to see. I have to go get mine. I thought we'll stop here and we'll continue Friday, inshallah. I think everybody want to break their fast. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Wait till the adhan is over. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. What's wrong? Think all right? Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Oh, is dates back there? I guess grab some, I guess. I'm good, I have some in the off. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. اللهم هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آتي محمود والسيد والفضيل وبعث مقام محمود وحده. طيب, any questions about the lesson, brothers? We'll continue Friday, inshallah. Anything? السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. هذا وصلى الله وسلم. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.